Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My name is Aldo Mazza, percussionist, drummer, and artistic director of Kosa Music, inviting you to listen in conversations with friends, artists, professionals, and experts in our music world. Today, I have the great honor and pleasure of bringing on a great friend of mine who I've known for many, many years, and finally, I was able to have him on. Rob The Drummer. That's Rob Gottfried. Rob, thank you so much for
Oh,
joining me today on this.
it's a pleasure because I knew how you were going to be a wonderful moderator for something like this. And I have seen you do this a number of times before. So when you've got it, you've got it.
Thank you, Rob. You know, you're not only amazing, but I have to tell you, you sure know how to bring the best out of people.
Back what you give out, I mean, really, if you're thankful, if you're kind, then you're thankful, and you have gratitude, then you've got to say, in this situation, this person brought out a wonderful thing, or these groups of people, it resonates, all of that, the new age language.
Right.
But all that matters is that you have something that really brings you to a higher consciousness point, I would say.
Yeah. And I mean, besides thanking you for being on my show, on this show, I think you're the perfect person for this topic, shaping your journey. But before we get on shaping your journey and what took you to where you are and what you're doing, just give us a little glimpse of what started it. What was that first spark, the fire that started it all for you in the very beginning, as they say, in the beginning?
Well, in the legend, I was 2.5. My grandfather had a garage in Hartford, Connecticut, had it all fenced off and everything. And there was whatever in the junk in the area. And they put me out and let me run because it was fenced and it was all right. And reportedly, I went over and I grabbed two branches, and there was one of those old water heaters, on its side, just happened to be. And I evidently went over and I started smashing this thing. And I worked the memory back later and looked up. And felt connected. In other words, my insides and outsides were connected in that moment very naturally. And I never forgot that unity, that connection, because that's the way it is anyway. Everybody, normal people think I'm in here and then there's everything else, except that's not really the way it is. You're already connected. And if you can get your mind, your ego, and your thoughts out of the way, then you are completely in the moment, in the now, and you are feeling the way it is. Beautiful. And that's what I felt at 2.5. And my father was a very famous musician. He was a sax and clarinet player with guys like Paul Whiteman and Bunny Berrigan and the Michael Jackson equivalent to the 40s, I would suppose, And so there was music in the house all the time, and my brother played and my mother played. And so, I mean, the combination of, in other words, my natural genetic wanting to destroy my neighborhood because I was big and I was strong and I just wanted to wipe out, and then to have it go to a positive nature because of my, nurture in nature. It's what you're talking about. And
Right.
And it was that combination that started me, I would say.
Nice. Very, very well said. That whole connection. I mean, I'm glad you said it that way, because some of us, when we've talked like that, people look at us like we're coming from another planet. But it is true. There are these connections that we make, and it's from your mind and what it does for you to connect to people and things. And
It's those moments that change your path. When I just went to the 400th anniversary of Zildjian in Boston. Okay, 400 years they've been. They say it's the oldest business in the United States, but I don't know. But I was because I'm a Zildjian artist, and I was in a VIP section, and sitting there, is Ringo's drum set that he played on Ed Sullivan. Ed Sullivan was the moment
Right.
when they came out. We all pointed and say, "That's what I want to do. I want to live like that. I want all the benefits. I want the money. I want the travel. I want the playing. I want the women. I want everything."
Yes.
You know, when you're in your teen years and your glands are going crazy, and you light on something like this, and then you get all this support at the same time, we're still living that dream. That's
Yeah.
what the cool thing is.
And the one thing that's amazing, Rob, I'm glad you brought it up. I didn't know that you were a child of the Ringo era. So was I, and Greg Bisonet and I, and a few others have exactly the same story, as if we read it from a script. Here you are, you're watching that Sunday night show, 9 p.m., and the next morning, the world has changed color, changed discourse. Everybody was a musician. It was in the schoolyard. It was just, the world was different, more positive.
Well, and the
And
culture changed. I mean, you got to
yeah,
see the Beatles in context. I mean, that was a time. I was at the original Woodstock, about 500 feet from the front.
wow.
Okay, so I'm in the middle of 500,000 people, and they were times when anything was possible. You believed that anything was possible and anything could happen in that way, and so you only had to make the effort. Was what was the philosophy was being kind of sold to you. But when you saw people that joyful and yet that right on, that precise, singing with that excitement and going and rebelliousness and going over the lines that had been traditionally provided, there was nothing like that moment. It was an explosion. I
Yeah,
agree with you. And many of our friends happen to be caught in that moment. And you try to explain it to somebody and you
nah,
can't,
you
because
can't.
it's a nonverbal explosion, like your spirit just got, you put your finger into a plug.
Yeah.
Just wonderful.
No, it's amazing the whole effect of that, which we feel, to this very day. I mean, Paul McCartney and Ringo are still out touring, are
Yeah.
still positive forces and big forces that provide us with kind of like beacons that it can be. I mean, 83 years old. Come on, guys, this is amazing.
When I saw Get Back, and I'm watching Paul pull these songs that we know so well out of the air for the
Yeah,
first time, he's forming it right there. I
yeah,
said, this fellow has been gripped by God and is an incredible vehicle that has inspired the others to be more than the sum of their parts. And look at the planet. Look
oh
how
yeah,
and the newer generation, they can only hear recordings, they can see some stuff, but you'd have to dive incredibly deep to get the kind of experience we got just very naturally. I mean,
yeah,
I saw Led Zeppelin 6 times. I was 10 feet from Bonham, and just when you get close, like I saw Hendrix 6 times.
nice.
I own one of his drummer's drum kits, Mitch Mitchell. I met him in Nashville, and it was enough to just keep the spiritual explosion when you meet these people and say they live the planet. They're not local musicians. They live the planet because they've chosen to be able to do that. A lot of the time it's a choice. A lot of the time they're just guided.
Yeah, it's funny you say the word guided, because I honestly believe, and I'll put my hand in the fire. I mean, this was like God decided, putting together these four people
Yeah.
with George Martin, of course, and making this happen for the good of history, for the good of culture, for the good of the planet, which till today. And it's something that those of us who were born at that time and were experienced it directly, like yourself. I mean, I know. I mean, I do what I do because of all of that. I mean, and I know you do what you do, inspiring all these kids in the schools. And I've always looked at you and I said, "Whoa, that's the patience of a saint to be able to do that." and to carry on. And I've read some of the comments, some of the letters you've received from people, not only in schools who you turn them the other, to on the right track. People who were in prisons and came out, who suddenly, all of a sudden, that message hit the right place, like we did. We were hit with this message, and
Yeah.
here we are. We change the world, or we bring to the world what we can to make it a better place. And that's what you're doing. I mean, you're going into the schools, right?
Schools, colleges, and prisons too. Anywhere where it's a confined learning environment. But the real reason they're buying into me is because of the way that I play and hopefully my communication skills. They know about more about me in the first 5 minutes the way I play than anything. And you got to also see it in context now, especially now,
Oh, yes.
because the kids are not getting a chance to see live music. They see it on their phones, okay, but it's not the same. That drum set that I saw on Ed Sullivan, they're not getting a chance to see that. That's going to inspire them to go into an hour and practice in a room by themselves.
Yeah.
You got to have real life experience. So I may be the only music live that they get a chance to see that comes in and kicks their butt.
Yeah.
I've gotten so many responses, I must admit, over the years, certainly, but people said, you came into my elementary school and you kicked my butt and I started practicing and now I'm in charge of 4 band areas in the state, and that kind of thing. It's tremendously rewarding. I
Yep.
saved 3 people from committing suicide on paper, and
Yep.
probably some others.
Sure.
Just because I came in and I was able to, it's not what I say. There's no real reason. I'm from a different generation. I'm from a different color a lot of the time when they're in real difficult situations. Sometimes there's language barriers. There's all kinds of things. But the reason that we connect is because of nonverbal, not verbal.
That's
And
good.
that's the big one. Everybody
No.
can say something. You can say stuff, but to feel it, if you can really feel it, that's what we went through with the Beatles. We felt that. And like you said, the next morning, it's completely different.
And literally, it's not figurative. It's literally the next morning, Monday morning, the
Yeah.
world changed. Everybody changed. And it's the mindset.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been the same since. And so when I look at somebody like you doing what you do, which is unbelievable and unbelievably important at a time like this, when as you say, kids don't see, they don't go to the dances we used to go to.
Oh, they don't have them. They don't have them. And their parents, and because ticket prices have gotten so large, parents aren't taking their kids to a concert so much.
Yeah.
And, that kind of isolation, plus what they just went through, obviously, 3
Yeah.
years of COVID, where they did not want to get 500 or 1,000 kids. I would usually do a whole school at a time. They didn't want to get them into a gym or an auditorium or whatever. But unless you inspire them and get them on a track of something in the arts as a natural way to change the way they feel, they're going to stay isolated. And those are the people that are running into a lot of problems later on down
Yep.
the line, obviously.
No, that's great, and I'm so happy that you are doing this. Honestly, just from a personal point of view, and from a person who sees the world from a cultural perspective, and seeing, what culture and music does for people and to people. I mean, and how important this is as part of the DNA that should be
Yes. Well,
all the time.
those Cuba trips that you've done, oh my God, just that kind of cross-cultural experience. And you can talk it up and you can say where the benefits are, but for them to feel us and for us to feel them and for us to be able to grab, I mean, because they're natural in their culture. And here we are coming from a completely different place trying to learn the authentic thing. It's like going to Africa and playing with African drummers.
Exactly.
You know, I studied some with Baba Olatunji.
Okay.
And my God, I mean, what was coming off of him, it didn't
Yeah.
matter where he was, near the conga or whatever, he would hit it. Yeah, I saw him doing it with, he lost 3 fingers from some kind of cancer or what, I don't know what he had. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter because his soul, it would resonate out. And I watched him take a room full of people with suits and, you know, nice dresses, and they all came for the concert. And he started playing, and they ripped their clothes off, and they moved the chairs out, and everybody went nuts. And it was the most natural human thing in the world. And I said, there's something going on here. This is magical to watch. This is amazing. Yeah, he was something else.
Yeah, and I mean, getting back to, I mean, the authenticity of things, and I mean, the nice thing is in Africa, of course, it's everybody plays what their culture is. In Cuba, I mean, it's a situation where it's not just natural on the streets, but they study the music, and it's a cultural education and health are the 3 pillars of your society, and that's well understood. And you know, unfortunately, some other societies don't think of it that way. There's 2 of them, but not the 3rd one, which is the unfortunate part. And when it becomes part of your society, I should say the very fabric of the society is based on those 3 things. Things change, and
When all those things are operating, you mean, when they're operating well.
exactly.
Absolutely, things change. Yes.
And I mean, the fact that you're going into these situations, whether they're schools or whatever, prisons or any situation where they need a positive message, and that message, like you said, not necessarily verbal. I mean, the verbal helps that you can explain some things, but just the fact, the human emotion, you're touching those people that you're doing something that obviously when you're playing, well, like when we're all playing, you know, the feeling that we have when we're playing, and you're projecting this, you're communicating with these other souls, and they're getting it, they're not being opposed.
I do everything I can to keep them off balance from the very beginning. I come out with a set of clear fiberglass drums, 5s. I'm playing 5s so that they can see through. I'm on Bob Gatson's drum frame.
I saw that. Nice.
He made it for the guy that had back problems, so that it's the first time the seat is actually part of the drum set. You're in it. You get into a cockpit, really, and get supported and so forth. But I look somewhere between a messiah and an alien. You know, I mean, if I came around the corner as an elementary school kid, like 5th or 6th grade, and saw this, I'd go, "What? Wait, what? We're having an assembly and you brought an alien? Very nice." And but everything I can do, you know, I play barefoot anyway, but it's a great thing because they always question, why are you doing that? And I'm saying, well, because I have like 4 hands. Think of me as just a very friendly orangutan. And you know, just everything I can do to suspend their preconceptions, because I need them to trust me or they're not going to listen to anything I say. If they don't trust my basic nature, if I'm coming in and saying, "Hi, I know what's right and you don't, and I'm going to tell you," and no,
that doesn't work. No.
I'm in touch with my inner child. They can feel that, and that's where we start, from a position of equality. I hook them by what I'm doing playing wise. And then I build off that trust. I start building off that trust and talk about stuff that nobody wants to talk about, like anti-drug, anti-bullying, anti-suicide, but more anything, pro-arts as a way of changing the way you feel naturally, rather than doing something artificial.
Yep.
Yeah, because so many of our friends obviously have gone through cocaine stages and alcoholism, and that has stopped their. I mean, it helps them stay on the road. The road experience is not easy for a lot of people. and it helps them, day by day or
For a
whatever.
minute, yeah.
In the long term, so many of our friends have gone down,
Oh yeah, yeah. And
unfortunately.
those who weren't able to kick that or control that or get off that, it's just they're not in the same place,
No,
and you
no.
can't
That's why
enjoy life
it's
the
great
same way.
to find people that are right and left brain balanced, right being emotional, making emotional decisions about your life, and then left brain being logical. When you can find somebody that can be logical, put their right foot in front of their left, but also have incredible passion, you know, like Dom Formularo was one of those people,
Sure.
just so sad he's gone. But he went to China. He's trying to do the exchange. You're one of those people because you're able to just open your heart and people feel it immediately.
Oh,
That's
thank you.
that's what it. When you called me to do this, I said instantly, absolutely, because I know what you've spread. It's beautiful.
And it's important, the moment I realized it was funny how this happened. I mean, this podcast is about you, not about me. But I mean, in that light, I think when one finds that point where you can make the difference. I mean, I remember when I had just met my wife, and then I sat in my friend's house in Morrisville, Vermont. Peter Wilder is a good friend of mine, and we're sitting there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm saying, okay, now I'm ready for this vision I've had for a very long time. And this is like bringing all these top people on the planet together. People come to study with them, spend a week, and uh, break the barriers
Yes.
and learn from the top. And we just sit like in the old days, in the original learning situations where people would go to the master and take out the water, go get this, go get that, and then they get some playing in. So it was that relationship of proximity
You're
in the
like an
learning
apprentice.
process.
Like an apprentice, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
real apprentice where you're there every moment of the day.
Yeah.
You're eating together, you're performing together, then you're walking out together, you're listening to some music together, and you're analyzing, you're playing, you're listening. And so that there's a amorphosis that happens to the individual. So that was the whole idea. And then we started. That was 28 years ago. And then we went, working with people in China, in Cuba, in the States, in
Yeah.
Canada, Europe, uh, you know, and we speak that language that
You've
everybody
got the
understands,
common
right?
denominator. You have the common denominator. That's the point.
And everybody will get it. And you don't even have to speak the language, which is the other great thing.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. I went to Japan for Yamaha for a month. It came through. I knew the special assistant to the United Nations head guy at one point, and he got in touch with Kawakami, who was the owner of the conglomerate that owned Yamaha. So I was visiting him, and he brought me over, and I did a month, and the I had an interpreter, but that isn't what got me over.
Right.
No, that's
Right.
not what got me over. What got me over was people looked in my eyes, and I was proud and clear about what I was trying to get across. And if you've ever been there, especially for Yamaha, a great company like Yamaha, um, they're teaching very very strong with a lot of kids, and I found that whole experience when we're talking about international interplay, they're very left brain a lot of the time. They
Yeah.
are very logical, and at the
And
same time, when somebody walks in that's got passion, I was signing things up on walls and symbols and everything. And Steve Gadd was next to my name. And, we were all the people that get attracted to making a difference, like you. It really is significant. And it involves in your life really a comeuppance, a wonderful raising of your consciousness, hopefully.
Yeah, and it's great to have that opportunity, and
Yeah.
I mean it's a gift that we have. I mean, music is a gift to begin with, but being able to share it and being able to communicate with people,
And that's
I
not always the case.
no,
There are a lot of musicians that are not good teachers. There are a lot of musicians that don't want to or cannot really explain what they're going through, but they're going through it, and they can create beautiful things. I know so many people that are incredibly right-brained, and they can create absolutely masterful, beautiful, creative things, but they can't put their left foot in front of their right. The rest of their life is like just, oh, what a mess. You and I both know we've met people
yes,
like this.
oh yes, oh
Yeah.
yes,
But you push it aside and you say, okay, but you've got the important part. I just wish you had the other part. It would make it a little easier, but that's all
right.
right. Yeah.
I have a question for you, Rob. You've been doing this for a very long time. What was your decision to go this way? Because I mean, many people. I mean, I teach a lot of people individually, collectively. I do clinics and performances all over the planet. And have been with my group Repercussion, and
Right.
myself, and then all the COSA things. But being so specific in this kind of environment that you have chosen, which is fabulous, by the way, and I you have my vote and support for that. But what made you decide to go specifically in that?
Well, the the second year I was in college, my father died from smoking cigarettes from lung cancer,
Ah,
and like I said, he was a world famous musician, and it absolutely just knocked me on my butt. And I would go on past that, and sure, there's some of my wanting to carry the torch for him, you know. But I ended up being a psychology, philosophy, music triple major. Took
ah,
me 5 years. It's at Quinnipiac University, as it happens. And I don't know whether you knew Sonny Costanzo. I don't know whether you knew that name. He taught at University of Bridgeport, where Weckl was, whatever. Just a great guy. But the point is, I wanted to be able to use what I had studied and still be able to be a player. And that's when it got into the psychology of, for instance, using something natural as a way to change the way you feel rather than something artificial. Because every time I sat down for 10 minutes at my drum set, I obviously felt better or different after 10 minutes,
yeah,
and certainly after an hour or whatever. And for most people, they don't get that. I mean, if you've had no orientation towards music and picking
mm,
up an instrument, you know the low self-esteem, what a lot of people say,
sure, sure,
well, I always wanted to, but I
yeah,
never got a chance, or never felt that I had the talent, and all of the reasons and good-natured reasons that you back yourself up. But the point is, I knew that something was going on here with nonverbal. And then when I got on Sesame Street in starting in '80, I got on about 6 shows because of connections to people that really thought I should try and do something more than just play. And so when I got on and I'm hanging out with Big Bird, I'll just tell you this story. Um, before we, Big Bird lived in Washington, Connecticut, and but on the set right before we went out to start filming, he walked over to me and said, "Rob, we're about to affect a little girl in Taiwan that we're never going to meet, but we are about to change her life completely." And they went out with that spiritual head. They went out to film with that head. Maria and Gordon and, Snuffleupagus and, all of them. And just the fact that they had that consciousness.
yeah,
And then I got on Nickelodeon and Kids World and Romper Room I did 3 times. And I'm on a more recent show called Ariel, Zoe, and Eli 2. I have 4 segments. And
nice,
yeah, the point is a little theater, a little drama, enough to create an environment where you can get through.
Yep.
because when you get through, you get so much back. You get so much back from it. It's like playing for an audience. It's like the difference between playing for a club audience who are there not for the music. They're there to get loaded first. And then number two, they're mating. And then number three is the music a lot of the time. But if you're playing for an audience that paid their money to come see you, and they're really serious about what you're doing, and you can feel that exchange, that rapport. It's not just a courtesy applause, but when they're in it, when they're really in it, that's magical, I think. And that's what you and I share, and that's what anybody who's listening to this is probably understands what we're sharing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, the incredible thing is this is so powerful. I mean, the image of Sesame Street. I used to watch Sesame Street, even as a grown up, and especially as a grown up, I should say.
Well, I'm not going to comment on your level of intellect, but boom. No,
but that's okay.
I'm kidding.
But I used to so enjoy watching the not just the positivity, but the messages that were like weaving through, and that things could be like that, and it was okay. And it was
the fact that they made math fun.
Yeah.
Old school math was like, oh God, I'm not good at this. I'm not, I can't make this work or whatever. They made math fun so that you approached it with a positive perspective first for a kid. And they also getting a second language. That took a really great positive hit. And then they started getting into real human relationships. And I'm sure there were lots of kids where the father got home at night and threw him against the wall. And this was that's what the great thing about Mr. Rogers. I almost got on Mr. Rogers. I was very close. I was talking with the producers. They said, you're a little too intense for us. Just a little too, it's a little too much. But, everybody at one point or a number of people were putting Mr. Rogers down. But for an hour, they had somebody who was gentle.
Absolutely.
Like I said, if the family environment was hellish, they at least had a chance to be at peace.
Sure. It was sanity. It was sanity at perfection. Yeah. And I mean, the closest I ever got to that was with Repercussion. We did actually, I just remembered this, the Pittsburgh Children's Festival a couple of times. And the first time we went, it was the regular Children's Festival because we had a whole show built around children's stories, one with an orchestra, one with our, different kind of show ourselves. But then somebody approached us about doing something, a story we had written with all there was a story about a little colt, and then we did all the sound effects and all the stuff around it. So we did this in Pittsburgh. What? A
little colt?
Colt.
Oh, a cult.
No, colt. C-O-L-T.
Small horse.
Small horse.
Right, thank you. I didn't know. I didn't think you were encouraging colts.
And it was great because
kids. Yeah.
It was great because they got Mr. McFeely, the mailman, right?
Yes.
To be the MC, who actually the person telling the story dressed up, and he was telling the story. So he was the invited guest with us, doing this whole show. Yep. That was nice.
Yeah. Well, Big Bird used to conduct a lot of symphonies. Carol Spinney was the guy's real name. He's gone now, but he used to conduct symphonies. And also, was it Don? He used to come out a lot too. Another character. I forget who exactly it was.
Yeah. No, great concept.
Great folks.
Yeah.
Great. know.
And I mean, the fact that you're still doing this and have been doing it for years, I'm just curious, how has the approach to what you're doing changed over the years in the reception?
I'm always trying to grab something that will grab them that's current, and that will, from not so much from a gadget point of view. I mean, the essence doesn't change, But
Right.
like I've been using some electronic drums and that I would play. But more than anything, I'll put the kid next to me and put him on, you know, one of the hand drums with lots of sounds and so forth. The point is for the kids to see the interaction between one of them and me. You know, I'll do that. That's been a mainstay. But I will do anything. I imagine I will get holograms at one point. I will actually have a hologram in front of me. A few years ago, I did a thing for the Fortune 500 companies, and it was the invisible drums. You know, the invisible drum set that's out now. Wonderful people, and people were knocked out. I'm playing in the air, and they're hearing the drum set,
Right.
and they're going, "What?" I mean, from their corporate kind of head, you know. I mean, some of them might be players, but they've never seen anything like this. I'll do anything I can. In other words, to be innovative and to get through on a level of maybe something they've heard about but haven't seen. You know,
The level of on the but on the other side, the reception side, was it easier or the same getting through? Like for example, if you approach people and say, "I want to come in to do this," was there more? Were people more? How should I say it? Receptive to having you come there? And was it easier? Might be sound like a funny question. I'm just thinking things are very complex right now because
yeah.
we make them complex. I mean, things shouldn't be complicated, but mankind has a tendency to complicate things. Let's say 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when you were doing this, what kind of um, trajectory did you have to go through to get to those people to accept you to do this presentation as opposed to now?
Well, from an educational point of view, for instance, in Michigan, I used to go for 70 shows. I go
Wow.
for 6 weeks. Um, we had the fellow, the doctor who discovered Lipitor, and he backed it. And the point was, I was coming in, and what the state police started seeing was that I was talking about the same things they were, the anti-drug, the anti-bullying, and so forth. But they were taking it from me, but they wouldn't take it from the cops, you know,
Right.
in that way.
Right.
So it was one of the more because it was an innovative way of approaching the same subject matter. They booked me everywhere, and you know, if we were late for a second show, they turned on the corn popper and the sirens and our trucks, and we're going to the next, you know, town and make way and you know, all of that stuff.
Nice.
You know, I went to Russia twice. I went to Belgium twice. I went to Japan. I went to China. I mean, I've played in some really remarkable places where I can't speak the verbal language. But I mean, the downside in America, if there's anything, is the fact that after I do my show, whatever music teacher is there gets absolutely crowded over by people that want to play drums. They all come and
Nice.
say, "I want to play drums. I want it now. I want," you know, it's like us with the Beatles.
Right.
Tomorrow, I want to play tomorrow, and they get overwhelmed. You know, that's the only negative, I think, because you want to instill that passion, you want to get that passion going, and for people that have never had passion for anything, that's the big one. When I talked about, you know, 3 people committing suicide, you know, when a kid writes me an email after my show and says, "Today was my 18th birthday, and I was going to kill myself today. But because of your show, when you came in, I'm not going to do it."
Yeah.
And we took him on as crew for the next week. We took him with us and made sure that he stayed with us, and
Beautiful.
just kept exposing him, and I still hear from him. You know,
Nice. Nice.
yeah, it's those things along the way. But as far as approaching the teachers, if there's anything at this point, it's that they're too busy. that they've got too much,
Yeah.
that you're taking away class time, that whole method of
Sure.
thinking. Whereas the kind of town I came from was a jazz town from West Hartford. They were doing jazz education in 1959, before just about anybody. And the guy who was doing it had a degree in music, a theosophical degree in music in other words, a minister of music. So he
Wow.
felt backed up by God to be doing what he was doing. So we got this whole thing going with the jazz band and so forth. And they still go when Wynton Marsalis. They go every year and they compete for that whole deal. In other words, they're really top flight folks, and it's because of his inspiration, and that's what can be really very meaningful.
Yeah.
To get that pumping, to get that push going.
Yep. And
Really good
it's,
stuff.
I mean, it's interesting that it's not more general, that doesn't go right to the top to say this must be done across the board. Everybody has to have this
Yeah,
kind of exposure to the arts, to the exposure to the creative, to
yeah.
be like good humans. I mean, part of the problem is many places are getting away from the creative because it costs. They have other issues to deal with, but they're not thinking uh, changing the mindset and the well-being, investing in the well-being of people. I mean, that should be
Got
in
to
the
have consciousness in order to direct that.
yeah.
You've got to have figured out a bunch of things yourself first. And unfortunately, I think what we're seeing, we're in a civil war right now in the country, and we've revealed to the world the great lack of consciousness, to a degree, of many of our participants here.
Yeah.
And you'd love it to be a perfect world, but it's going to take a few more generations, I think. Unfortunately, I hope we have that.
No, I think
Yeah.
we can't give up hope, Rob, because I mean we have people like you, people all around us who, fortunately, we know each other, so we can support each other and say, "I love
That's
what
right.
you do," which makes you feel better about, gives you more fuel to keep going because you're not alone. There are many people who think like that, and will stand by
There-
and defend it.
There's great power in getting the kind of feedback that you get from your trips, and that I get from doing whatever. I mean, I play with 4 or 5 bands at the same time when I'm home. Otherwise, when I'm on the road, obviously I'm doing shows. But to get the feedback is what ends up keeping you buoyed. And you're absolutely right. We're not alone. On the other hand, there aren't enough of us, as far as I can. It wouldn't hurt to have a little more consciousness, and you got to see that the educators are the important part for the future musicians. That's the thing about just seeing live music on the phone is a big one.
Yeah.
That they would not get inspired if you don't have it in your school system, or if you don't have it in your parents. You're not going to get led into that area. And what's going to happen, unfortunately, when Paul McCartney is not here anymore and Elton John is not here anymore. And
Yeah.
I know there will be other people coming up, but will it be the same kind of intensity in a very positive way? I can only hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we just have to be making sure that each day there's one more on our side, not just one side or the other. I mean, on the side that understands,
Yes.
and the side of enlightenment. Of course, these other things are important, but this is, I mean, we know it's part of the fiber of a society that really needs to be curated and
Yes.
taken care of at all times, and like protected, like healthcare. Like, you have good doctors, you have good institutions, you
Yeah.
have, but you have to also have to have the creative music, the arts, which feed a whole other side.
Well, and we're
Otherwise,
doing that. The United States was an experiment. This 250 years or so, this was an experiment where freedom of choice, you had freedom of choice. You had the freedom to screw it up if you wanted to, or you've got the freedom to really do something important. But at least most of the time, the state is not telling you you can't.
right.
You can just about do anything you want in this country if you've got the ability and the resources and so forth. But
True.
just the fact of freedom of choice, that's why I think the whole planet looks to us to show the way of that we're going to use that freedom for a good reason and not just let it go in the toilet.
Right. And you end up creating so many incredible things having that kind of freedom. For the good. I mean, the thing is, all these great developments, creations, have to be in the light of the good. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes when you're developing something for the good, there's also the other side that happens, and people want to be creative on the other side. But I mean, the more of us who support only the right side, the good side for the good and the betterment and for the well-being, the more the better, because it's never going to be a perfect world, like you say, right? So,
There's such a segment of the population that just has to worry about survival. That just, they're in survival mode and they don't have time for a quote higher involvement going towards a goal beyond just surviving.
yeah,
And we find a lot of the time that when you go into some of these environments, they're fighting hard. They're fighting hard to live.
Yeah.
Never mind, take on an instrument and play. On the other hand, they find that to be great solace, a great place where they can at least feel alive and no one's telling them what to do some of the time, or at least a lot of the time, hopefully. And that matters. That matters for if you go into the projects, if you go in, I know that what you've seen, and to a degree in Cuba and so forth. I did a clinic with Walfredo Reese Sr.
okay,
Oh, we had a wonderful time. I mean, because you know him. I
of
mean,
course.
he's great, and just the joy of people seeing intercommunication and inter connection, and thinking about back in Cuba what it was like when he was coming up in the 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the 50s. I mean, what did he go through? And he takes it like a statesman. Really, he talks about it in a great way. But
And then,
that doesn't mean it doesn't exist there.
no, of course. But the interesting thing about Walfredo is Senior, that he is probably the last living bridge between a musical bridge between U.S. and I should say the West and Cuba, and specifically the U.S. because although he was born there, he created a lot of and developments with the percussion and drum set and jazz because he moved to New York, went
Yeah,
back. So he was back and forth a number of times and he
yeah,
was working with all the top people. So he was able to develop on one side and the other. So this thing about who is influencing who is a really interesting one. And we had a Walfredo in Havana actually. We brought him down. We invited him down, and actually one year, both he and Walfredo Jr. were
yeah,
there. So that was funny because you see the original guy who created like the American drum set and how the
yes,
Cubans used it, and
yeah,
then and all those things in between. And he's the guy who knew everybody on both sides.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that that was
He's
amazing.
got a singular place in history. You know,
Absolutely,
I just
absolutely.
spent a little time with Sheila E. because she was at the Zildjian thing.
Okay.
And there's somebody else whose father was a
Yes.
major influence in the business,
Exactly.
and brought that old world. And she's a hybrid. Or she had some Billy Cobham in her too. I mean,
Yes.
she's an amazing player.
Incredible. I saw her with, I mean, I've known her over the years and seen her play in different contexts. And when I saw her with Ringo, she really,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I really, I said, wow, that's incredible.
Was that in addition to Greg Bissonette, or
No,
that
that was before Greg.
before Greg?
Because she
Okay.
was playing drum set, and then she
Yeah.
would come out and do some timbale things, and she's just
She's
um,
wild, man. She's wild
amazing, amazing.
in a great way.
Yeah, yeah,
In a great way. You want people to let themselves go completely, and when they can do it in public and still, it's such a positive. It says, yes, I resonate with that. I
sure.
feel that kind of explosion.
Oh
That's
yes.
She's wonderful that way.
Great role model, and it's nice to see someone like that. There was a student we had in Italy who said, "Oh, the person I watch all the time," and she was like 13 years old. She says,
Yeah.
"I just watch Sheila E. and focused on her." And today this girl is still playing and is a professional player, and that is a great role model. That yes, you can. You can do whatever you want
Yes.
if you
Yes.
decide to, and don't let anybody stop you.
That's right. She didn't care. She didn't
That's
care.
it.
And to a lot of young girls, was very important to see her in that role. And with Prince,
Yeah.
and just yow, that you can't. She got on the wave and surfed to a degree, but if she had to go against the wind, she went against the wind. I think she's very courageous,
Yeah, yeah. That's great.
in that way.
And I
And
mean,
I think of the guys that we know that have jumped the gap, like Billy Cobham and Narda
oh,
Michael Walden, and who are the definition of geniuses, because the definition in this case being somebody who sees a target that no one else sees and hits a bullseye.
yeah,
I mean, when I would go to see Motivational Orchestra, I saw them like 6 times, and I we just, because
right.
that was a whole other level. That was, you got to go back and start again, to a degree, but just, it was a whole other level. And I'm glad to see musicians I'm glad to see Weckl doing as much video as he's doing, and
Yeah.
Dave really, he's so into what he does, and he's able to communicate it.
Yeah, and does it so well too, and
Yes.
showing that it doesn't stop here. Well, how about this?
Yes,
you know.
yes. I saw him and Steve Smith both play with the Buddy Rich Orchestra,
Oh,
and
wow.
with the big band. My God, it was right here in Glastonbury, Connecticut. They came to a high school,
Wow.
and my God, yeah, you know, that's God's dance.
Yep. No, that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's amazing. And I mean, getting back to what you're doing, what are
yeah,
the things that you're hoping to accomplish? Not just accomplish in the general sense, specifically within the structures, because what you're doing is such a focused work and an important one. I mean, too bad we can't double and triple you so you can do
yeah.
that many.
People have talked to me about franchising. Let's have other Rob the Drummers go. I said, no, I don't think so. No,
That's
I'm not
funny.
that business oriented. No, I don't.
No, it's beautiful what you're doing, but it would be great to see this scaled, but you doing it because you have the personality. I mean, you're real, and I always
That's
what
what you
I
can't get across to somebody who you'd send out. Remember Slim Goodbody? I think
no.
he was on. He had a suit showing all human organs and everything. Yeah, I think he was on Captain Kangaroo, or maybe it was Sesame Street. I don't know, one of them. And he sent out, like, there were 15 Slim Goodbodies all over the country, who were doing, and they did a wonderful job. And because it was gimmick oriented to that degree, he could pull that off. That was great. He made a lot of money, and I'm sure he retired into biological heaven.
But I mean, being in your presence, I mean, you take a lot of room, Rob, and in a good sense. And it's nice to have, people that just take up room for the right reasons, inspire, and just be good people. good people with something to say and something to share, bringing to the table. That's so nice.
It's what I got from my father. My father was a great communicator. He was funny. He had jokes and stuff too, but more than anything, he was a lover of life and people, and you knew it. And that's what I really got from him. And he married my mother, and my mother was Phi Beta Kappa from Syracuse, 5 years of college, all scholarship, never had to pay a cent. And that was in the 40s when women weren't going to college. So she had wonderful mind, and she had a wonderful heart because she married a musician. So, I mean, I was shot from a gun. I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice at all.
So you had a great starting point.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. And that's why I'm trying to encourage, the parents and I can't, they don't have a perspective. They don't have an orientation, the kids at all, like what I went through. Yeah, I'm telling you, I came from a jazz town because of this guy. Everybody was like, "We'll get you an instrument and we'll get you lessons, and you're on your own from there. But you want to play in the jazz band because the jazz band's going to Europe every 2 years to go and play. Right. And as a 15-year-old, you're going to go and play in front of people like a pro, and you're going to sound like a pro." And so the whole town was like this.
Nice.
And so the combination of my parents and the town were pretty amazing till I was 18.
Well, that's beautiful, and I mean, too bad it doesn't happen all the time. Part of the thing today is the whole technology thing just takes up our whole minds. Not that there's something wrong with technology. I mean, we need it, we love it, it's very useful, very helpful, but it shouldn't replace anything, and especially in a social context. I mean, that kind of upbringing that you had, I mean, should still be there while we develop this technology, AI and otherwise,
Well, on a big picture, I just got to say it, on a big picture level, what we could be fearful of is the myth of Atlantis. And the myth of Atlantis was that their technology overcame their culture and they imploded. And if that happens, you don't know. I mean, when I heard them trying to put AI back in the box, they were saying, let's slow down with AI, and we've already got AI programming AI, and, all of these protests and strikes. I mean, like for the SAG-AFTRA and stuff, they're seeing that they're not going to be able to come up against this kind of speed and accuracy and so forth. And that they're losing something if they don't support them. And I hope I'm a SAG-AFTRA guy. So because I was on some of these shows, and I can only hope that that we don't lose it to technology. I saw Roland, are coming out with I think a drum set that's both acoustic and electric at the same time.
And Wi-Fi.
Together. Oh, and Wi-Fi too?
Yep.
Wow.
That's because though part of the big issue is all those wires. It takes 3 hours to put it together, and then they break, and then something is wrong. So it's all Bluetooth. So I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
It's not going to be Giovanni Hidalgo sitting with 6 drums, doing something that's beyond human potentiality to even reproduce.
Or Buddy Rich or Ringo Starr or Billy Cobham or any of those who that tactile part of it where you're playing and it's really you and it's your hands that are creating that sound.
They dedicated their life, their entire life to it, and that's what kids should see. The fact that when you focus on something, all the people that I know, not all, but many, that became geniuses, what I would call geniuses, had to severely imbalance their life for a while. In other words, just do one thing.
Sure.
If you're going to play this instrument, I remember Buddy Rich saying, you're going to play drums, you play everything that can be played on the drums. Everything. And he's right. I mean, you just have to focus and you decide this is worth my, well, it depends on whether you believe in incarnation or not. This is worth my 100-year cycle for me to put my effort into this, and I will become the best that I can become.
Yeah.
And that's worthy. That's a worthy sacrifice.
No, I wouldn't say sacrifice. I would say investment.
Yes,
Which
that's
is
right.
it's a serious sacrifice, which is really an investment in my book. It was like I remember this clearly when I suddenly realized I wanted to be a musician professionally, but I not a good reader. I didn't really have no training really, and I just had to practice 8 hours a day. And I would, turn down my friends calling and say, "Hey, we're going skating, and the girls are coming, and we're going to have a party afterwards." And I say,
Yeah.
Friday night, I'm going to be at that studio practicing. And then when
Well,
I finish, I go home and again the next day.
now
And
you know
that's
what
what
I'm talking about when I say sacrifice. Because how many musicians do we know that have lousy social skills because they never had a chance to hone those because they were in a room for 8 hours practicing by themselves?
Yes.
My first teacher was Joe Porcaro, Skinny Joe Porcaro.
Wow.
My second teacher was Al Lepak. And these
Beautiful.
guys, they didn't take any prisoners. Lepak was an ex-Marine. He wrote the Lepak, the freeze Lepak method of
Right.
timpani, and just he was the head percussionist for the Hartford Symphony here. But he was known to the world. His
Yeah.
books were very hard.
Of course,
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
his books. He's
yeah.
amazing. And Joe Porcaro too. He
He
was,
was
I had
wonderful.
one lesson with Joe when I went out to LA once, and I had a lesson with him. Wow.
Yeah, well, we had a quartet. It was Lepak's Percussion Center. That was the name because was his business, and we'd go every Saturday. But it was Skinny Joe Porcaro. It was Al Lepak. It was Richie Lepore, who played with Elvis Presley and was a major LA guy, and Art Peretta. I don't know whether you know that name.
No, I
Art
don't.
Peretta
I
was
don't.
Tal Farlow and
Okay.
just all kinds of folks. But these four guys were like teacher's teacher, and 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 everybody flocked from all over New England to this place. Yeah, you couldn't help it. You
Nice.
met Joe. I mean, Joe
Yeah.
was the nicest freaking guy you'd ever
Beautiful.
want to meet.
Yeah.
I mean, you could feel the old world Italian in him
Yes.
at the same time him trying to stay very much in the moment now, the future now. And he taught such wonderful things in LA,
Oh yeah.
with John Robinson and all of those guys. And yeah, uh, we're all very fortunate to have bounced off some of these giants,
Amazing.
some of these
I mean,
giants of, because when you get a chance to spend a little time like we're spending today, it becomes more than the sum of its parts.
yeah, absolutely. And we're so fortunate. It's like every once in a while somebody says, I'm so happy to have been born. Oh, I think it was Bill Bruford when I had him on my podcast. He
Mm,
said I'm so happy to have been born when I was born.
yeah,
It's true because we've seen
yeah,
so much in such little in our short lives, really. And
yes.
and for
Well,
me,
yeah,
it's
they concentrated. They concentrated. I mean, those years with Yes for him and King Crimson, and my God, that stuff's still being revered now because it's so intense and wonderful, just wonderful.
oh yeah.
There would have been a Tool without King Crimson, I think. You
Oh,
know,
I mean
uh, you
everything.
know, and Tool's a group that sells out in 20 minutes for the whole tour. Now, you know,
Right.
they were just here in Connecticut.
Beautiful. And I mean, the inspiration. I remember I used to see every group when I was growing up as a teenager in Ottawa, every group that came through in a space of, I think, 3 or 4 years, every single group, whatever they were, whether it's Weather Report or Gary Burton or Yes or, you know, King Crimson. I mean, all of them. And
Yeah.
I would, in each one, I don't, and I think back and I say, how in God's name did I even have the time to do that? Because I saw them all. And I
You
just
made it your
remember,
business. You made it your business.
but it was funny because I remember, and I said this to Bill, I was going to see with a friend of mine At the arena show, great show was coming up. It was Black Sabbath, and I forget who the warm-up act was. It was another huge name. And then this band, it was their first tour of Canada at the time. They were the warm-up of the warm-up, and they were called Yes, and nobody knew who they were. And
Sure.
of course, you couldn't get a seat in the place.
Yeah.
18,000 seats sold out, and we were all like this. And then when Yes came on, you can hear a pin drop
Yeah.
after the first song because
Yeah.
everybody was in such shock.
Yeah.
And I turned to my friend, and my jaw was like, I had to pick it up off the floor, and I said, "Am I dreaming?" Like, what? And it was amazing. And Carl Palmer, the same thing. I remember when they came in the first time, it was in a nice theater, maybe 1,500 seat theater.
Yeah.
It was their first tour, I think, in Canada. And I was sitting front row. And so you see this massive drum set with the gong in the back and all of that.
Yes.
And what they were doing, and I think they had just released Tarkus or something like that. And I'm sitting there just completely blown away.
Yeah.
And your mind is being fried every time you see, whether it's ELO or Gentle Giant and all of these guys, or Frank Zappa or Chicago or Blood, Sweat, and
Sure.
Tears. And every one of them so different from the last. Nothing to do. Lineage is like planets.
Yeah. 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 I saw Jimi Hendrix came into Hartford. I saw him, like I said, like 6 times. But this was his birthday. And, he was humping the amp. He was humping the guitar. He was anything. I mean, he was so sensual and so on it. And everyone was so stunned. It was the first, I think it was the first tour. And Mitch Mitchell was maybe 25 feet up in the air on risers. And Hendrix had like 8 high,
Wow.
for his amps. And I forget, the bass player had the same thing.
Wow.
But everybody was so stunned at the end that no one could speak. All you heard when everybody left was just the seats popping up by themselves. That's all you heard. Everybody was, they'd never seen anything like it. That's when you get that kind of, oh my God, to the culture, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I saw motivational orchestra and Jethro Tull, I think, together. I think they opened for each other or whatever. I mean, when you see this kind of, right, we can't communicate it because the only way that the kids can see what we're talking about right now is purely from video.
Yeah.
And not the same.
Not the same.
Not the
And
same.
it makes a difference to see it live. So I'm really super happy that you've been doing what you're doing and you continue to do what you're doing. Promise.
I appreciate it. Yes.
Because it's important work, Rob. Really important work.
I feel this is a very unique niche. I realize, and but it followed for me on a practicality point. The idea that when you do something you love, you don't work a day in your life.
Exactly.
And the point is that if I can make enough to make a living and at the same time do wonderful things spiritually and carry the torch for my dad at the same time, I guess that's a nice combination for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you sleep well. And the
Yeah.
next day, you just can't wait to get up and continue.
Thank you for painting that picture. That's beautiful. Yeah. No, that's it. That's it.
That's it,
But
right?
your life is a lot like that. I think I can tell you.
I so look forward to every day, and I say, come on, one more.
Well, I hope you're not in any any problem there. I hope you will be.
No. I've renegotiated my contract, so I think I'll
Makes
be
sense
good
to me. Yeah, I have my fixes in also. It's people I know in high places. So yeah, I got it.
Yeah, but I wanted, Rob, we could talk for weeks, but I really want to thank you for joining me in this conversation. to inspire people and to think, outside the box sometimes and think, what else is out there? Who's doing what that's really interesting to think about and consider.
The bigger picture, the bigger picture.
Yeah.
You know, who was I before I was born? Who am I going to be after I die? Or is it just about this? And if it's just about this, is there a moral imperative? Are you supposed to do something nice, or do you just want to grab for yourself? And I think there's constant battles with people's insides about they're grabbing for ultimate survival. And I got to do it, emotional survival even.
Yeah.
Or should I be here to share with others? So those are fundamental decisions that have to be made. And I'm just glad I got a chance as I was growing up and got protected pretty much till I was 18. That I had a chance to make some decisions about this.
Yeah. And the right decisions.
Well, thank you.
So as I always say, Rob, to be continued.
Oh, right, brother.
Thank you.